So we were after a warlord named Joseph Kony, and he was the leader of the LRA, the Lord's Resistance Army. So we show up to this village. They tell us about these two guys, and they were insistent that these two guys had killed a villager. We recognize almost immediately that they're not LRA. Chances are they probably did kill him, but there wasn't much we could do. And you can just see that they don't have much time left. They know that these villagers are going to kill. My name's Josh Nacey. I served 6 years in the military as a Green Beret, went through they call it an 18 X-ray contract, which is like a special forces contract. So basically is what it does is it assures that you get to selection, but that's as far as the guarantee goes. And so I made it through the Q course and spent the whole, other than the training, of course, and the Q course, the whole time on a Special Forces ODA.
Back up a little bit. Before that happened, did you grow up in a military family or?
No. Both my grandparents, my grandpas were in the military. One was in the Navy, unfortunately. and the other was in the Army. My grandpa in the Army served in the Korean War, and my grandpa that served in the Navy was in World War II. So, and both of them, I believe, were drafted. They just served 3 years.
Do you hear much of their stories, or do they keep it mum?
Well, both of them have passed on since then. My dad's dad, who was in the Navy, he died on my 30th birthday, and I turned 33 in basic training, so he never even knew that I joined the military. So, but in my house, I have both of their, because when you serve in the military, you have that military funeral, burial, whatever, and they cover your casket with a flag and
right,
fold it up and then hand it to your family. And for my grandpa on my mom's side, or my dad's side, I just bought a case because I thought that was important and cool. And I've always been drawn to the military, but hadn't served yet, but still had that patriotism.
You signed up when you were 30? Is that right?
I was 32 and then almost 33, turned 33 in basic training.
What happened up till that, and what led up to that? What made you join, and what was kind of the lead up to that?
So I owned a couple companies, construction company, a painting company. I grew up painting. My dad was a painter and recently retired. So did that every summer from 5th grade on. What wasn't much help in 5th grade. But I was born when my mom was 16, almost 17, and my dad had just turned 18. And by the time they were 25, there was 6 kids.
Wow.
So, and my youngest brother's 7.5 years younger than me. And I think it was a lot.
And you were twins.
Yeah, I think it was a lot for my mom. So we started going to work early, not necessarily because we could work, but because it was 2 less kids at home that my mom had to take care of. So, but yeah, so I wrestled in college. And when I got out of college, it was not very long after 9/11, and actually went and talked to a recruiter to join the military, and the recruiter never got back in touch with me. So just kind of let it slide and didn't didn't think much about it. Figured maybe that wasn't the path I was supposed to take. If a recruiter doesn't call you back, that's probably a sign from God that it's not your time. Because I don't know any recruiters that don't call back an eager participant, volunteer, if you will. But
And where were you living at the time?
I was living in Sandy here in Utah. So,
and how old were you then? When 9/11 happened?
Let's see, I was like 25,
okay.
I think, just to turn 25, because I served a church mission when I was 19, and came home and started college about 2 weeks after I got home from my mission. Then I started wrestled up in Wyoming, Rock Springs, Wyoming, there at Western Wyoming Community College. And that's where I met my wife at the time. And went to Colorado, wrestled for 4 years, and then 9/11 happened while I was still in college. But that was September. I think school got out like 6 months, 7 months after 9/11, and didn't know what else I was going to do. I had started a painting company when I was in college, but was moving from Colorado back to Salt Lake, so didn't have anything established. So I thought it's a good time to join. And I think so many guys were joining back then. That's why
they never called back.
They weren't that worried about calling me back and signing me up. But yeah, so then I moved back to Rock Springs, Wyoming, and started my painting company, and then started a couple more businesses, and did that for about eight years or so, I guess. And then just decided or felt impelled that it was time to go serve. Wanted to do something, I guess, a little bigger than myself and get that experience. Like I said earlier, I was always drawn for some reason as a kid. I thought I was going to be a Navy SEAL or wanted to be a Navy SEAL or something like that, but couldn't swim. So I'm like, it's probably not the route for me. And I'm like, well, what can I do that doesn't require swimming? So going the Special Forces route.
What did your wife think at the time?
Well, we had talked about it before we'd even gotten married. I had said at some point in my life, that's what I want to do. So if you're not good with that, then, but she didn't think it would probably ever happen. And
that's pretty unusual at that age, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, in basic training, we had one other guy who was, I want to say he was 41, 42.
Wow.
And then me, and then everybody else was pretty much 19 to 23. So
you went in the recruiter in Rock Springs? Where'd you go?
Yeah, well, no, because I wanted that Special Forces contract, because I wanted, if I was going to give up the life that I had, because I was doing well, the businesses were good, we had nice things. It was a nice, cushy life. And so I figured if I'm going to give that up, then I want to do something that I can't do outside of the military. And so I worked with a recruiter for probably about 8 months before he said, okay, I've got a Special Forces contract available if you want it. Well, he didn't ask if I wanted it because part of me thinks that it was kind of a test because, like he said, every person that played Call of Duty wanted to join special forces and do all that. And he said he had a stack of applications, 4 inches tall and sitting on his desk. So he said, we don't have anything available right now, but call me every Wednesday and I'll let you know if it changes. So every Wednesday for like 8 months. And I'm looking back on it now, I'm pretty sure there was some contracts available, but he was very selective on who he wanted to give those contracts to because he didn't want guys washing out on his dime. He wanted to make sure, granted, you never know what's going to happen. And, crazy things could happen. You get hurt or whatever and not make it. But he wanted, I'm assuming, to make sure that I had the mindset to actually go through with it. And if you can't call every Wednesday, you're probably not going to have the fortitude to get through that type of training. So I'm pretty sure it was just a test. Like, let's see who put him through the ringers, see if he's serious about this. And I guess when he thought I was serious enough or I gave him enough, he said he had the contract available. And I actually went to basic training. Was it May 2nd, I think? But it was the day after they took out Osama bin Laden. So when you showed up at basic training, that's all the drill sergeants were, we got that blankety blank. And,
Where did you go to basic?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Fort Lost in the Woods is what they call
What's
it.
that place like?
It's out in the middle of nowhere. But it was, I did what's called OSET, which is one station unit training. So you do basic training and AIT, which is advanced training, all at the same place, which kind of sucks because you're with your drill sergeants the whole time. They lighten up towards the end, but they're still drill sergeants. And other places, when you go to AIT, it's just a lot more relaxed. And
So, what was it like the first day there? Did you just stand out because you were so much older? And
so I showed up with my head shaved because I knew I was going to have to shave my head. And of course, I got flack for that because they give you flack for it. Doesn't matter. And thinking that I was going to be ahead of the game, the drill sergeant said, you still got to shave your head, and they shaved it much closer than I had shaved it. So, yeah,
so they were giving you the business.
Yeah, right from the get go. And I think one of my drill sergeants, the head drill sergeant, knew that I had a special forces contract. So, and I don't know if there was some kind of resentment, like that's what he wanted to do, or because he went to a school called Sapper School, which is for explosives, and failed out of that, and so didn't get his Sapper tab. So I think there was some bitterness because it seemed like he was always just a little bit more on me than some of the other guys. But then some of the other drill sergeants, because I went there for a purpose. And so I was pretty dialed in and wanted to do everything just right. So I was putting in maximum effort, which I think bugged some, and then some appreciated it.
You're saying drill sergeants or the
Yes,
guy? Okay.
yeah. Nobody has time to be bugged when you're in basic training and you're not a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
Because you're just trying to keep your head above water. And so the first day showed up, I think they refer to it as a Shark Tank, but you're on the bus. It's just like the movies. All the drill sergeants run onto the bus, get out of my butt, and just go nuts. And you just, some people get rattled. Some people are just like, you listen though, but some are affected more than others. And again, the more experience I had in the military, the more I understood that there's purposes behind all of it. 'Cause they're training you to deal with chaos, 'cause combat is chaos. So you have to be able to learn how to take it when somebody's screaming and yelling at you on a bus. But of course, most people have never had that in their life. So it takes them a minute to adjust, but they get us all off the bus.
Especially nowadays, right? I mean,
yeah,
kids are pretty coddled growing up.
Yeah.
They don't really hear anybody yelling at them mostly.
No, because it's like people think it's against the law or something.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you hurt somebody's feelings by creating boundaries. But so we get off the bus, all our luggage is in those green duffel bags, and they're having us hold it over our head. They're having us run around the track. It's chaotic. Then we get up to the barracks, and they have us line up in front of a bunk. So that's going to be your bunk from that time going forward. And so I was in my, and they're interesting because they wheel around, so you can push them all out.
Bunks do?
Yeah. So it's this bunk, and then you can open the bed, and that's where you keep your uniforms, stuff like that. And then they have a little locker that you keep your blouse hanging up and whatnot, but it's all connected to the bed. So they can make you push all the beds to the side and smoke you in a big old room. And when I say smoke, that's a term the military uses for just what you would think of as calisthenics, but a lot of them till you're just completely smoked.
At your age, because you were a little older, did you feel like you were affected different from the physical stuff?
No, the physical stuff didn't ever bother me, but it was interesting. And again, I knew what I was getting into. So it wasn't a surprise, but it was still an adjustment because, owning a couple businesses and having people that I work with and stuff, and being in charge, if you will, of a business and managing people and whatnot, to being at the bottom of the totem pole was unique. Because I was used to telling people what needed to be done, and now I'm essentially being treated like a child.
Right.
And where everything's dumbed down as far as it could, which again, I have a couple stories that we can get into, but after spending some time in basic training, I understood why we were all treated as childs, because there were a lot of adult children, if you will, that were there that were just.
What were some of those stories?
Well, one of them, so the drill sergeant had us all sitting outside. Sometimes they just have to waste time, I think, because we're not going anywhere. We don't have TVs. We don't have phones. We don't have anything. So essentially they just have to babysit. everybody. So we're all sitting around on the concrete. This drill sergeant's telling us, stories about previous privates, whatever, and experiences that he had before he was a drill sergeant in a unit or company or whatever. And apparently this soldier put his hand in a paper shredder. And so the drill sergeant says, yeah, he put his hand in a paper shredder. What do you think happened to his hands? And one of the soldiers said, I would imagine his hands had a lot of lacerations on it. And he's like, this is a drill sergeant, right? And he's like, English, what are you talking about? Lacerations. And I won't use the same language that he used, but then the soldier, the kid said, well, he effed up his hand. And he's like, yeah, he effed up his hand. He didn't even know what lacerations meant. And I had my best buddy up in Rock Springs said, when you join the military is the uneducated telling the unwilling to do the unnecessary. And when the drill sergeant, when that all happened, I'm like, there's some truth to that. There's definitely some truth to that.
Was there any point you go, oh, I've made a mistake?
Yeah, there was a lot of times where I was thinking, man, what did I get myself into? Because when I commit, I don't want to quit. But there was several times even during the Q course where, it got pretty rough. And I remember thinking to myself, what have I got myself into? Like, this is a lot.
What would you say was the hardest part for you there?
Well, I would say probably the hardest collective part, because there was always individual things that were just tough or challenging or whatever, but probably SUT, which was small unit tactics. It's 8 weeks long. You're out in the middle of the woods in North Carolina. There's an old base out there called Camp McCall, and they've kind of turned it into the special operations training center, if you will. So that's where you go for selection. That's where we went for SUT. You just are in little different buildings. When you're at selection, you're in a tent with a bunch of guys. When you've gotten up to SUT, you get a little bunk room, barracks, if you will. And, but for 8 weeks, you learn small unit tactics, ambushes, raids, things of those sorts, and you do them over and over and over. So we'd go out into the field for 3 days, and they'd give us a point. We'd be in groups of, there's probably about 15 guys in my group, and maybe a little less. And they'd divide us up into 2 groups, and the point man had to, because land navigation was a big deal in special forces. They hit that hard. And one of the toughest parts of selection is what they call the STAR course, which is a huge navigation course. And if you don't pass that, you don't get selected. But so they give you coordinates because everybody already knows how to do it, but it's still a pain. It's just so much easier with a GPS. And trust me, many times we were all thinking, why can't we just use a GPS? So we'd have to find a point. So we'd hike And our rucksacks were usually around 100 pounds each. And we'd hike all day till we got to our point. Then we'd set up our little, ambush and wait hours till a car drove by that we were supposed to ambush. And we'd go through the drills, do the ambush. They'd tell us how bad we did. And then we'd get our rucksacks and we'd hike another couple miles, sleep maybe an hour or two, and then back to the next ambush site. And you do that for 3 days, and then you'd come home, or what we would call home, come back to the barracks so you could basically wash up, refit, clean weapons, whatnot, clean clothes, all that. Sleep one night there in the barracks, and then you get up the next morning, back out doing that for another 3 days. So it was just nonstop for 8 weeks. I think they've shortened it up a little now. It's a little longer back when I did it.
Many guys wash out?
Yeah, that's probably where the majority of guys ended up washing out. We had a guy who went through Ranger school and got his Ranger tab, which is pretty much the same thing. I would probably argue, I never went to Ranger school, but I would argue that's probably harder than SUT. But one of the first nights we were out there, sitting in our little patrol base, laying out in the woods, watching your sector or whatever, it was snowing pretty good and it was cold. And so I think guys just start thinking, I got to do this for 8 weeks. Nah, I'm not doing that. And so a lot of them quit. And this guy who was a Ranger, he quit SUT and went to become an instructor at Ranger school. So, but I think, and they say this all the time, especially in special operations, right? You just make it to lunch. Right? You got to have the mindset. You can't think of it as, oh, this is going to be 8 weeks of hell. You just have to say, well, let's just, and I have to endure for 8 weeks. You just have to have the mindset of, hey, let's just make it to lunch. And if I still want to quit after lunch, then I'll make it to dinner. And you just take
it one little bit at a time.
Small steps. You're not going to climb the mountain in one step. If you're looking at the mountain, looks daunting. But if you just say to yourself, just take one step, then it's manageable. And that's usually how guys get through it. But realistically, nobody's going to make it through unless they are set on making it through. Because just like in life, we got pockets full of excuses. And if we give ourselves the opportunity to pull one of those out of our pockets, we're going to use it and we're going to quit. There was guys that would show up to selection that were gung-ho. Oh man, I'm ready for this. I'm going to do this. And when things got tough, now all of a sudden their family situation, well, I got a lot of family stuff going on. I got to get home to my family. It's like, well, that family stuff was here when you got here. So if you give yourself any opportunity to quit, you're probably going to quit. And for me, that just wasn't an option because I gave up a lot to be there. So I wasn't gonna, of course I could have been kicked out of the course, hurt, whatever the case may be, but quitting wasn't an option because I moved my family out there. I had 3 kids at the time. We had my wife at the time got pregnant right in between basic training and the more advanced training. Like I said, it was still all kind of the same thing, but they gave us like 2 days before we started some of the other training. And my wife at the time came out there and we're like, well, if we're going to have another kid, then like,
you got 2 days.
This is a shot. If you don't get pregnant, then we probably won't try anymore. Cause then it was just going to get tougher and tougher from there, even me being gone and whatnot. And lo and behold, she got pregnant. So my youngest son was born in North Carolina when we were stationed up there at Fort Bragg.
So how did all that end? And what happened at the end of that?
The end of
all that training,
basic training.
Yeah. And the special training.
So when you go to selection, if you get selected, then you enter what's called we call it the Q course, but it's the qualification course, which is a little over a year of pretty intense training. You have language in there. Every Green Beret has to know another language. And so if you make it through the Q course, you get your awarded your tab, they call it, the long tab, and your Green Beret, and you're sent off to your company, if you will, and put on ODA.
So you finished pretty well then, right? To get selected?
Yeah. So selection is 19 days, and they run you.
It's like tryouts.
Yeah. So,
and like, what did that consist of? Like, what did you have to do?
Well, they have a lot of teams. They have team stuff. They have individual stuff. First, you do individual stuff where you do a PT test, you do a run. You don't know how.
But nobody tells you your time. Or
nobody tells you.
You don't know
time.
what you're doing compared to other people.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of tell how you do with some people because you're all running the same dirt track, if you will. It's like a trail that goes through the woods of Camp McCall.
How far did they make you run?
I just don't even know.
You don't even know. Was it long? Like a mile? Several miles? 5 miles?
It was over 2, but probably under 5.
And how were you feeling about it when you were doing all that stuff?
Good. I mean, a little stressed out because you're being evaluated on everything that you do. Even when you don't think anybody is watching you, then that's when you're probably being evaluated the most. They see what you're doing when nobody else is there. But so we did that, and then you do a lot of land nav, which I actually really enjoyed because you're out in the middle of the woods and you're by yourself. So you can't talk to anybody. If you do run into somebody out there, you can't talk to them. You have to stay away from them. You can't walk on roads. If you get caught walking on a road, they call it roadkill. They'll sign your because you just have a number, and that's what you're known as. They take your rank off and everything like that.
So there's no bias in the thing. You're just another person out there.
Yep. And I'm sure they know who some of the higher ranking guys are, because they're going to be evaluated a little different. Right? An E6 or an E7 that's going through there, he's going to be expected to know more than a private that's going through there that's never really done anything in the military. So they do know, but I think the intentions is not for the guys going through to know. So I mean, you have your last name patch on there. I think, I can't even remember. It's been a while, but I was number 225, and that was my like roster number. So by cadre and everybody, I was referred to as 225.
At the end of that, how do they let you know? Do you know the very day that it ends?
So after 19 days, they bring everybody in, a one-on-one with the cadre, and the cadre will let you know if you got selected or not. And they informed me that I was selected, but then they'll tell you all the things that you got to work on too. Because you take all kinds of tests too, math, vocabulary, all kinds of things, because they just want to kind of see where you're at. And I hadn't done math. I mean, I took algebra, maybe algebra 2. I took the minimum amount of math that I needed to in high school to graduate high school. And that was it. And it had been, it'd been a long time since I had been in high school and had done any of that math. So I remember some of those things. I was like, okay, when is 2 negatives equal a positive? Wait, what? How do you do that? I just forgot how to do a lot of that stuff because I didn't care for it anyways. So I bombed the math. And I knew I bombed the math, but he's like, well, you did good in this. It's like, but your math sucks. I'm like, yeah, I know. So.
How long were you in with him? How long would that meeting be when he's telling you whether you made it or not?
God, I was probably in there for about 15 minutes.
Is it just you and him?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Are you sitting across a desk from him?
They just set up some chairs. Yeah, there was some desks because there was also like a conference where everybody in selection would come to get read up on, whatever it was that we were doing, land nav, whatever, right, to explain what the expectations were and whatnot. And so it was a pretty good sized room. So there's probably, I would imagine there's probably 7, 8, maybe even a few more cadre, because they rotate. Somebody's there 24/7.
Yeah.
But all the cadre are there and they just have a list of people, and they call whoever's in their list, tell them whether they made it or not, and then go call in the next guy. So there was probably like 10 guys in that big old room. They're far enough away, you can't hear what's going on. You're not really concerned about what's going on with anybody else. You're just hoping.
Could you tell the guys that didn't make it?
Yeah, I mean, guys would come out with their heads hung pretty low. I mean, they would tell everybody, because that's, you'd go out, you'd see your buddies, because you would make friends with people out there, and you either, yeah, I got selected, or no, it's no go, and dang it, sorry.
You pretty excited?
Yeah. I mean, that was the first step to that long journey. So, but I was excited and grateful that I made it through that first phase, but I knew that was just
it was just getting started. Yeah. Where did you go after that?
Well, all that happened out at Fort Bragg at Camp McCall. But when you get selected, then they put orders in. You're stationed at Fort Bragg, and you move your family out there with you. So I stayed out there for a week or so, and then went back, picked up my family from Rock Springs, loaded up our U-Haul and vehicles, and drove out to North Carolina.
What was Bragg like?
I liked it, but I didn't spend a ton of time on Bragg, because when we were doing stuff, most of the time we were out at Camp McCall, kind of segregated from the rest of the military but since we were training, but I liked it. It's big. Air Force is there as well.
So, and at this point, when they're training you, you're not getting the same abuse?
No. Now, some guys will, because that's one thing. They've probably changed it since then, but a lot of times the guys who went to, they call it SWIC, special warfare training, something. So guys, again, I think it's changed since then, because I've actually got a lot of buddies that are still in and now are at SWIC as instructors. And it's a lot of people have to do their SWIC time, they call it. But there was also a lot of guys that people didn't want on their team. So they like sent them off to go be an instructor, because they weren't really pulling their weight. So those kind of guys, those were the difficult instructors. Those ones were the ones that we would call in the community tab protectors, because they just want to make it so hard nobody else makes it through and everybody quits because they got their tab. They don't want anybody else to have a tab.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. So again, I think they've changed it since then, because they realize the importance of, again, training up the next generation of guys that you're eventually probably could potentially be on a team with. Because when those guys get out as instructors, they go back to an ODA. And some of those guys that they instructed during the Q course could potentially be on their team. It's a pretty small community. So,
and how long is that whole Green Beret process? How long is that?
Probably about a year and 3 months, about.
And for people that don't know, explain what the Green Beret, because I think people hear it, but I don't think they really fully understand what that group stands for.
So every branch has their special operations unit, if you will. Green Berets are the Army's equivalent of the Navy's Navy SEALs. And then, the Air Force has PJs and combat controllers. And so everybody's kind of has, each of those special operation groups have what they specialize in. And the Green Berets specialize in unconventional warfare, which is what Afghanistan was. And unconventional is just, you don't have uniformed soldiers fighting against uniformed soldiers. Bad guys' tanks on one side, good guys' tanks on the other side, and you're just shooting. And, that's a conventional war. You're just fighting other soldiers. Unconventional was, again, like Afghanistan. You don't know who the enemy is. They live amongst the population. They dress like the population. So it's very unconventional. And so initially, the Green Berets played a big role in Afghanistan because they were the experts in unconventional warfare. Now, of course, like the Navy SEALs and all, they wanted a piece of the pie as well. So they tried to get spun up on unconventional warfare as well. But, the Green Berets, that was why they started. And that was their mission from the very beginning. So they obviously had a leg up on everybody else on that aspect of it. And they call the Green Berets force multipliers, because you go behind enemy lines, you link up with an indigenous force and train them up and fight with them. So you can turn an ODA, 12 guys is a full team. I was never on a full team now. So those 12 guys can create a battalion-sized force.
Because each of those 12 guys has a different specialty, correct?
Yeah. So the way that ODAs are set up is you have your 18. So the 18 series, the MOS, the 18 series is special forces. So you have the Alpha, the 18 Alpha is the captain, the officer on the team. Then you have the Bravos, the 18 Bravos are weapon specialists, and you'll have a senior on a full team, the way that it's set up, which is rarely the case, but you'll have a senior and a junior. So you have 2 Bravos, then you have 2 Charlies, and you have 2 Echoes. And so there's the way that it's set up is there's always a senior, somebody that's been there for a while, and a junior who might not have been there as long, but has somebody to learn from. Now, I was on 3 different teams, and I was the only 18 Charlie on any of my.
And what's the Charlie specialty? What was your specialty?
That's the Special Forces engineer. So I was the demo guy.
Blowing stuff up.
Yeah. I was in charge of the explosives, breaching, things like that, but also team equipment and construction. So if we went behind enemy lines and needed to build our own outstation or outpost, whatever, I was the guy that was in charge of finding the locals, making sure they did the work the way they need. So through the Charlie course, I mean, we did plumbing, we did just the basics. And one of the reasons why they put me in as a Charlie is because I had a lot of construction background. And normally, if I didn't have that construction background, they probably wouldn't have sent me there because my math sucks so bad. and statistically, guys who don't do well at math don't make it through the Charlie course because there's a lot of math. There's a section of the Charlie course called Calc and Place, which is calculation and placement of explosives. And it's a lot of math because you got to.
Did you catch up on your math then in the end?
Yeah. Well, again, it's not hard when I knew that there was a purpose. I didn't like math when I was in high school because I didn't know what the purpose was. It's like, okay, when am I ever going to use this? I mean, when I was painting and doing construction and stuff like that, I'd figure out what the square footage was so that I could give bids and stuff like that. But I mean, that was the extent of my math. I didn't know. I mean, honestly, and this is a little embarrassing, but when I went in there, I didn't even know what the circumference was or diameter. So I was like, I mean, I was way behind the 8 ball. But again, it's not that hard to figure out when there's a purpose behind it. It's like, okay. And so I actually made it through the math stuff. I was one of the top guys in the class.
Seems like you enjoyed it, the Q course stuff.
Yeah. I did enjoy it. I definitely enjoyed being on a team.
Did you get along with the other guys on the team?
Through this Q course, yeah, I have buddies that they'll be lifelong buddies that I went through the Q course with. Because when you're going through things that are really difficult, it's a different kind of bonding. I like to say granted, the military isn't necessarily a corporation or a business, but kind of. But that's the only job in which coworkers will refer to themselves as brothers or sisters. You don't get that out in the normal community at work. Your coworkers.
Right.
But in the military, you're not coworkers, you're brothers, your sisters, and that's because you go through a lot of difficult things together, which creates these bonds.
Were they closer in age? Were you closer to age than the guys in the Green Beret training? Or were you still the older guy?
I was still one of the older guys, but the guys that did the best in the Q course were in their early to mid 30s. Had one buddy that I went through with who was actually 42 going through the Q course with me. And he was going to be a Charlie as well. So we did the Charlie course together. He ended up getting hurt and got rolled back to the next class. But he was a Navy SEAL before he went through as a Green Beret. So,
you got any funny stories from the Q training that stand out in your mind?
Well, yeah, I probably have funnier stories in basic training because in the Q course, there's some funny things that happen, but it's so intense and everybody's so, forward thinking, just keeping everything on track that you're just not.
It's not much funny stuff happening. Is that what you're saying? Everything is just so focused.
Yeah, and we'd goof around, we'd make fun of each other and whatnot. But some of the best times I ever had though was going through the Q course, like doing land nav, because we'd be out by ourselves doing land nav, and then we'd come back, and again, there's no TV, there's no cell phones, there's a fire and a handful of guys. So we just sit around the fire drying out our uniforms or socks or whatever. And you just have some of the best conversations you've ever had because there's no distractions. You just sat out there around a campfire and just BS'd for a few hours and then crawl in your sleeping bag and probably get some of the best sleep that I ever had because you were pretty wore out. But there's just something about being out in nature and not having all those distractions like phones, TVs. I did get sick and tired of MREs. So the meals ready to eat, the little meals they get, guys would fight over certain ones because some nobody liked.
What was the one you liked the most, and what was the one you hated?
They had a chili one in there that I really liked because you could mix like the cheese and everything in with it, and it was actually pretty decent. The tuna one wasn't bad, but it was just little tuna packs that you can buy at the store, but it's just not enough food when you're burning that many calories. It's nice because it's relatively healthy, I guess, if you can call that processed tuna healthy, but compared to some of the other stuff, got a lot of guys like the chili mac, which is like chili and macaroni and cheese mixed together. Lasagna wasn't bad. They had a pesto pasta one with chicken in it that wasn't too bad. The breakfast ones I didn't like.
Was the big thing that you just didn't feel like you were getting enough calories to keep you going?
Yeah, you could eat one, it wasn't like you could just graze all day. You were pretty busy, and you go to the chow hall, if there was a chow hall, and eat really quick and then do more things. But it's not like, okay, well, I'm just going to take some snacks with me in my pocket and, or pack me a tuna sandwich for later, or a peanut butter jelly sandwich.
You got a little window. You got to fill up during that, and that's
you
it.
Eat, and that's
it.
And usually the chow hall, if there was a chow hall available, you usually just got breakfast and dinner because you'd be out and they'd give you an MRE at lunch. So
in all this, because we haven't talked about this, what did your family think about you doing this? I mean, your parents, your brother.
Well, my dad thought I was crazy for giving up the
painting stuff.
Yeah, for
your
giving
businesses.
for giving up the businesses that I had to go join the military. Uncertainty, danger, whatever. He's like, "What are you doing?" And to be honest, I was a little bummed because I thought he'd be a little bit more supportive. Not that he wasn't supportive, but just questioning why at my age with such an established life that I had, why would I be giving that up and moving my family out to join the military? But I mean, since then they were obviously proud that I did it and proud of my service and whatnot. But yeah, at the time there was a lot of people questioning why I would give up the life that I had to go do that.
So, okay, you're finishing up Q course. What's going on in the world? What year is that?
So I joined in 2011, graduated the Q course. I was probably right towards the end of 2012, because I joined in January 2011, but didn't go off to basic till May.
Right.
Had some things that I needed to take care of before I left, and I could have left a little. I told them I couldn't leave until March. So the May 2nd or whatever it was when my report date out to basic training.
So at this point, Afghanistan's winding down to some degree.
And
a little bit?
No, they were still. See, that's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is there's stuff going on all around the world. I mean, my last deployment was in Africa, and nobody had any idea we were even doing anything in Africa. And I had buddies that were in Jordan. I had buddies that were, so many other places other than Afghanistan. I mean, of course, a lot of guys were in Afghanistan too, but there's always, even now, I shouldn't say that because now a lot of stuff really is going on. But I think people would be surprised at what countries we're actually in, or a special forces team is in. Because when I deployed to Africa, 3 teams from our company, the company has 5 teams, and 3 of those teams were deployed in Africa, and each of us were in different countries, but kind of in the same little triangle. And people, so when we're in the middle of nowhere with 10 other guys, like it's just our team that was stationed where we were at in Africa, just us. We were on a little UN base. So there was some Moroccans there that did like security. There was a handful of South African military guys who were the military police on the base. But this was a base that didn't have like a fence around it or,
so you guys are just this little island out in the middle of Africa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, back up before we get there. How did you, okay, what happens at the end of Q? Is there a graduation or?
Yeah.
And how was that?
You graduate, they give you your Green Beret, and it was awesome.
Proud moment for you?
yeah, I think proud moment for my family, and then we yeah, I think the moving. I mean, that's when I was gone a lot, even during the Q course. But like I said, I served 6 years. 4 of those 6 years, I was gone, whether it was out of the country or it was some kind of training here in the States, but just gone from home. So it was a lot for my
Yeah,
family.
That's hard on your family, hard on your wife.
And that's why I didn't stay in longer. I actually was going to re-enlist and really liked doing that. But my wife at the time, she didn't like it at all. And she did not want me to re-enlist. And so I didn't re-enlist. So,
Okay, by the time you finish Q course, how long have you been in at this point? 2 years?
not quite 2 years, almost 2 years.
And then where did you go after that? What was your first assignment?
I served in the 19th group, which is based out of Salt Lake, there at Camp Williams. So was there, but then got put on active duty orders almost immediately to go do what they call a JSET, a joint training, something where we go to another country and train their military forces.
Oh, you're training their guys.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Philippines. It was interesting. It's definitely because where we go, I mean, anytime we leave the country, we're not going to the places that people vacation. So I'm sure there's a lot of really awesome places in the Philippines, but we weren't in one of them. So, and I mean, that was an eye opener for me too, because the way those people drive is crazy. They don't use, I mean, you'll have one lane that you're driving in, which all is going one direction, right? And oncoming traffic will come. And if somebody decides they want to pass, they just move over into that lane, and then everybody else starts driving on the dirt because these people are coming out, and then they claim the whole road. So now you're driving on the dirt and there's 2 lanes of traffic taking up the whole road going the same direction. Because once one guy goes over, then somebody else follows. Next thing you know, you're just driving on. It's crazy. They didn't even have stop signs. You come to these intersections and people just will maneuver until they can get around. There's nobody that's like, okay, you guys stop. Okay, you guys come.
Total chaos, isn't it?
It's total chaos. And then you see little kids out on the freeway in little tents that are begging for money or food or whatever. I mean, it was.
How long were you there?
We were there for only 6 weeks.
Did you feel like the training meant something to the guys you were talking to?
Yeah, because they were deploying to Mindanao, where it kind of became a real, and I think still probably is, but a real terrorist hotspot that people were kind of fleeing to that area. So they were sending their own military within their own country to try to push out the terrorists. And so we were training them on how to fight the terrorists as the units were preparing to deploy. But that's another thing a lot of Americans don't realize. These guys are getting deployed in their own country. We have it pretty good.
Yeah.
We have it pretty good. And a lot of people don't.
The Philippines, don't they have 1 million little islands? It's really spread out, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
It's really diverse.
And there's
a lot more diverse than you would think, I think, over there. Okay, that was your first mission, Philippines. What was after that?
After that was I did a lot of training, but didn't go on any deployments. Wanted to get to Afghanistan, but our teams just weren't going. So I asked my sergeant major. I wanted to go to the 20th Special Forces Group to get on a deployment. And he was, okay, yeah. I get it. A racehorse wants to race. Like, I get it. Sure. I'll give you the blessing, And then the next time I saw him, I hear him in the hallways. Where's Nacey? Where's Nacey? I'm like, right here, Sergeant Major. He's like, you don't have to leave. We're going to Afghanistan. And I'm like, well, I already told these guys I would go. And I'm not going to bail out on them just, because now we're going. And that actually had one of my buddies die on that deployment to Afghanistan. And
you guys went to Afghanistan.
Well, the company.
Okay.
So they were going to.
The 19th went.
Yeah, they were going to put me on a team to go there so I would stay. But
you'd already committed to go.
I already told my buddy in the 20th group that needed somebody to go to Africa that I would go because they needed a Charlie. So I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, again, I asked the sergeant major, said, hey, he's like, yeah, sure, get it. So basically right after I got home from the Philippines, I transferred over to the 20th group and then started pre-deployment training for 3 months. So I was gone for 3 months.
And are you training specifically for what you're going to be doing in Africa?
Yeah, I mean, they just...
Or is it just training? More general training?
It's kind of just more training. It's just basically getting the whole team on the same
Did you like those
page.
Guys?
I loved those guys. Several of those guys that I deployed with in Africa, I consider family. My team leader there, that guy was phenomenal leader, phenomenal friend, phenomenal soldier, phenomenal everything. I was actually on his team in the 19th, and he went to the 20th, and he was the one that requested that I go to Africa with him. And so I went, but his kids call me Uncle Josh. So they're like family. My niece and nephew.
Yeah.
Both of them graduated from West Point. I mean.
Okay, so you're saying when the 19th went over to Afghanistan, they lost a guy.
Yeah. Guy in our company was lost.
What's that story?
They went into a building that was rigged with an IED, and so a few of my friends were injured pretty bad, and one was killed. So it was, I don't know if you can describe that as a bad deployment, just, because you lose.
Yeah, that's what happens in war.
That's what happens. But it was, it didn't feel like a great deployment because of that. Really shook the company there for a while. And my team leader, when I was in the 19th group from the team that I left, he was the team leader on that deployment, and I think it really shook him up. And he's got a tattoo to kind of memorialize it, but I think that messed up a few of those guys over there. It's just it was a bad situation, and they ended up coming home early because they didn't have enough guys. They just had another team go out, fill in the rest of the deployment. But that deployment had another guy in it wasn't the same company. He was Bravo Company. But anyways, he went home for 2 weeks because his daughter was being born. And so they gave him 2 weeks to leave, flew back to the States, saw his daughter born, spent some time, little time, but spent some time, and went back to Afghanistan and was killed 2 weeks later. So his daughter's never, ever going to know her dad. And I graduated, I think, with like 79 guys or something like that, and 12 have been killed in combat. So it's a pretty
high odds.
Yeah, high risk job. I had a buddy, we called him DJ Mike, and I went through the Q course with him. Solid guy. And when he was over in Afghanistan, they took fire, and he was on the machine gun. And so he was shooting to keep cover for the rest of his teammates. And when he saw the last guy, he looked back, saw the last guy had made it back to cover, not safety,
right?
But cover. They weren't out in the open anymore. He died. And then when they recovered his body, he had like almost 100 bullet holes. He just willed himself to stay alive till he knew everybody was safe, and then he passed away. But that's the beauty of that job, is those are the kind of people that you work with. And I think that's what makes it hard transitioning out back into the civilian world, because there's not a lot of people like that. Those guys that you're with, like, they got your back through thick and thin, no matter what. It's like, I can't remember that movie with Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner. Ben Affleck comes in and says, "Hey, I need you to do something. We can't talk about it. Can't ask." And Jeremy Renner, his response is, "Whose car are we taking?" Right? Like, that's the kind of guys. You say, "Hey, I need something." It doesn't matter what you need. They'll be there, And so transitioning out of the military, you kind of lose that brotherhood, and it makes it difficult because you have a lot of purpose and you have a lot of meaning, and you kind of you lose your identity, but you also lose that brotherhood and that mission and all those other things. And again, like we mentioned earlier, it's the only job where people will refer to themselves as brothers.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why, because people, you'll have friends that'll say, "Oh man, I got your back, I die for you," whatever. In the military, they'll do that, and you're not even necessarily friends. There was plenty of guys on my teams that just personality-wise, we didn't really click, but I still knew, like, when it came down to it, they
were going to cover for
you. They were going to fight right beside me, and I would do the same for them, even though off duty, I probably wouldn't have hung out with them.
Right.
Because it kind of drove me crazy.
Right. Okay, take me to Africa now. What was the mission going to be over there? Did you know before you went over there?
Yeah. So we were after a warlord named Joseph Kony.
Very famous. I remember my kids talking about that. And at first I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
That was a big deal at the time.
Yeah. And so our mission, and he was the leader of the LRA, the Lord's Resistance Army. So our mission was to find him and
capture him or kill him.
See, they're not really specific on a lot of, because they're not going to make the call for you. They're not going to, just like Osama bin Laden, it was a capture or kill mission. But if he died, nobody was going to ask any questions. Why'd you do that? But I spent some time, because I did a split team operation and we were there for 6 months.
Where were you?
The Congo. So we were right on the border of South Sudan and CAR. So we had a team. And
how'd you get there? When you flew in, did you fly in by cargo plane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
C-17 with our gear. And I will say I didn't travel there.
What do you mean? When you were there?
Well, no. So when I was going to tell you that the best plane ride I ever had was coming home, but it was coming home was part of it. But those cargo planes have enough space, our gear's in there, so it's still kind of tight, but I strung up a hammock in the plane and it was awesome. And I didn't know that we could do that on the way out. And then I saw some people doing it and I was like, oh man, I wish I had my hammock. So I made sure I didn't forget my hammock on the way home. But you're up at altitude, so it's a little chilly anyways. And then the planes be a little bumpy ride anyways. And so it was just like a natural rock to my hammock. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say, but they give everybody Ambien. I'm sure it doesn't really matter, but they just
so you can sleep on there.
Big bottle of Ambien, and they just, here you go, and giving everybody Ambien. And I slept almost the whole way till we got to Spain, and then we hung out Spain for a little bit so that the pilots
could rest up,
got their rest, and then flew back home.
What was your first impression of the Congo when you got there?
It was crazy. Because honestly, and maybe this sounds a little ridiculous, but I had no idea people still lived that way. Because I remember, so we flew into Entebbe and then took smaller planes. I took a smaller plane because I was getting there before some of our other guys that were coming with our cargo stuff. So, and they dropped me off last, and there was one guy that was staying in South Sudan from a team, and then at CAR. So they dropped the guy off from CAR, and then South Sudan and CAR were at the Congo. And I remember looking out the window and I saw a female in a grass skirt with no shirt on. I thought that stuff was just like National Geographic stuff, And so it was crazy because I'm like, literally the Congo is in the heart of Africa. It's Central Africa, but I'm thinking like, this is what everybody thinks of when they think of Africa. But all those people, they lived in mud huts with grass roofs. Some people had electricity, some people, in some of the towns like Dungu, but a lot of people just lived with no electricity, no running water, just in these mud huts that they would build themselves.
And you guys were out in the middle of nowhere, kind of on a base?
Yeah.
How many guys were out there, would you say?
It was just our team and one intelligence guy. So the intelligence guys they had 6-month deployments too, but they were 3 months spread. So when a new ODA would show up, they could spin them up on stuff, and then they would know what's going on. That intelligence guy would go home, and a new intelligence guy would take his place. But this ODA already knew what was going on, so they'd train up that guy before they went home. And so it was always a little offset, but there was, on that outstation, there was 11 of us and then one intelligence guy, so 12 of us.
And what did they tell you about Kony and what situation you were facing?
They didn't really. I mean, that was part of our job, was to
go figure that out.
To figure it out. And that's the one thing about special operations, I think, in general, is they give you the commander's intent, which in this case was capture or kill Joseph Kony, and that's it. And then you figure out how to do it. You collect the intelligence. You build missions, and then go perform those missions.
What was the first thing you remember that's of importance that you did there? What stands out in your mind?
Well, it wasn't one of the first things, but it has always kind of stuck in my mind, because a lot of these little villages they had radios, and they knew that we were there, but they also learned that we weren't authorized to come help them unless it had to do with the LRA. So then they would tell us, we have suspected LRA here, so you need to come out and get them. But that was the magic word, LRA. If they said something else, then it's like, sorry, we can't come. But if they said LRA, then it was like, okay, cool. And so we jump on the helicopter and fly out to whatever village it was. And I remember flying out to this village. They said they had 2 LRA guys. We landed. It looked like a lot of those people had never seen white person before, let alone a helicopter. Like, they were fascinated. But it's crazy that there's so many people, maybe not crazy, but still live that way. And so we show up to this village, and they tell us about these two guys, and we recognize almost immediately that they're not LRA, because there's other guys out there with different ethnicities, if you will. So you can kind of tell who they belong to by the different type of ethnicity.
Right.
And so this group, these guys were, a different type of ethnicity. So we knew they weren't LRA. So there wasn't much that we could do. But they were insistent that these 2 guys had killed a villager. And so, we were trying to get to the bottom of it, even though there wasn't a lot we could do. But we're like, okay, well, because we had interpreters with us. We're like, have you guys checked the bag? Like, you'd think that'd be one of the first things that they did, right? And they're like, oh, no, we'll check the bag and see if there's anything in there that would lead you to believe that you are correct about this guy, killing one of your villagers that was missing. That was just, he's missing. So they just assumed that they killed him. And again, very different. It's not like our judicial system here, where innocent until proven guilty, which still probably isn't always the case, but there it was basically guilty until proven innocent. If they thought you did it, then you had to prove that you didn't. So they have somebody looking through the bags, and they find the villager's shirt. And again, very different than here in the States, because most of those people had one shirt. It wasn't like they had a whole wardrobe. They just wore those clothes that they had all the time. And when they would wear out and they could acquire another shirt, then they'd get another shirt. But so it's hard for Americans sometimes to think, but they recognize that.
Right.
Yeah, that was his identity. That was, his shirt. He's not going to leave his shirt. So chances are they probably did kill him, but there wasn't much we could do. And I have a picture, one of my hard drives of these two guys, and you can just, it's kind of sad because you can see that they know, they understand that they don't have much time left. Like,
you can see it in their eyes.
They know that these villagers are going to kill them. And we know that they're going to kill them because they're convinced, especially when they see the shirt, they're convinced, and they probably did. But sure enough, we couldn't do anything because they weren't LRA. So hop back in the helicopter and we take off, and sure enough, they killed those two guys basically right after we left. And I remembered it so vividly because I could see the fear in those guys' eyes. I could see they knew what was gonna happen. Because again, here, it's not like it is here.
It must have been surreal for you a little bit.
Yeah. Because it was, something that, we're not used to here. You have a level of safety and protection here, despite what people think.
Yeah.
It's a lot safer. Again, over there, there's no, they got some police in areas.
There's no real institutions, right?
We're out in the middle. We're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
We couldn't even drive a vehicle there. We have to take a helicopter to these villages.
So you had your own helicopter on base?
Yeah. Well, they had it parked in South Sudan on their little outstation.
Was it a Black Hawk?
No, they actually contracted out from some civilians. So they had a Huey, an old like Vietnam Huey, and two other helicopters. One was like an old Navy helicopter that looks like half of a boat.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And so we just let them know when we needed one, and they just hop in the helicopter and fly over.
Did you go on extended missions out there and camp and stuff?
Yeah. Yep. We would go on patrols and stuff, looking for, sometimes I don't even know what we were looking for, and I don't know how we expected we were going to find anything. It was so thick. The jungle was so thick over there. It was hard to maneuver. It was, we would go out with, we call them, they referred to themselves as the Fry. It stood for some, but it was basically like their special forces in the Congolese military, and we'd go out with them. And it, again, very unique over there, because when you join the military, you're in for life until you die. So the other soldiers, when you get old, will take care of you, but you don't ever get out of the military. When you're in the military, you're in. And, we had command. We were under AFRICOM. We had command that wanted us to take certain things with us every time we went out. So we'd have, again, probably about 75 to 85 pound rucksacks trying to truck through the jungle. And these Congolese soldiers would have like 10 pounds. They'd have some rice, and that was about the extent of it. And, we had radios, and then we were required to take extra batteries for radios and all this stuff. And one of them asked us one time, because we would have our interpreters with us because they couldn't speak English. And he'd be like, why you bring so much stuff? We're like, because somebody told us we had to. Somebody that's not even in this country told us that we have to take certain things. And so we have to take, because we'd have to take, GPS things where they could track what we were doing. And that was frustrating too, because I remember one of the first patrols we were on. It was exhausting anyways. And we didn't even make it that far because we were literally cutting through the jungle. We would follow the Congolese soldiers and they would cut with machetes a trail that we were walking through. So imagine, you can't make really good time doing that. So, and we would stop earlier because the triple canopy was so thick that it would start getting dark, before the sun was going down. And so we couldn't see. But again, command doesn't know. They've never hiked through the jungle before. They don't know what it's like. And I remember our Echo, he's the guy that's over the radio stuff, was sending some satellite text to command, telling them where we're at, that we were done for the night or whatever. And they're like, wait, you guys only went, this far and you guys are already done. I remember I was so pissed because I'm like, you have no idea what this terrain is like. And you're questioning, that we only went 1.5 miles all day.
You had to cut your way to get there.
Yeah. And it was so thick and you'd have bugs, ants, mostly falling from trees because you'd be hitting bushes, tree branch, whatever, vines. You'd be getting stuck on everything. Ants would fall down your shirt and they'd start biting you. So when you'd stop, you'd try to get it out. And I remember several times and looking up, I'm 5 feet away from, the guy in front of me. And I look away and I look back for, a couple seconds. I look back up, gone. Can't see him, and he's probably 7 feet now away from me. And so you just have to sit there and wait till he moved. And then you'd see a little movement. You're like, oh, okay. And then these guys are griping about us only going so far. And, and we were there during the rainy season too. And I've never seen rain like that ever in my life. It was.
Did you ever engage in the enemy there at all? Those guys? Did you ever run into his guys?
So when we were in that split team operation, we were at an African park, me and one of my teammates. So it was just us two. And we would go out with the Rangers there at the park, whatever. And we had some engagements there. And, but most of those were just poachers.
Which is a big problem over there.
Yeah. So they had a lot of elephants. That was another crazy thing, seeing lions, hyenas, elephants, giraffes, hippos.
Yeah, you have a hippo story.
Yeah, all that stuff in.
You saw it in Lion King, and now you're seeing it in person.
Yeah, you see it at the zoo, and then you see it. And man, those elephants are so smart. I remember it was just so they'd hide under trees when people were flying over the top of them because they'd recognize hearing like a helicopter or a plane or whatever. And so they would hide. And I remember seeing I spotted one because it was a little baby. So I told the pilot, hey, there's some elephants over there. So we went back in the direction And he's like, where? And I'm like, I think it was somewhere around. And then all of a sudden you see 2 adult elephants run from under the tree and the babies following it. So they heard us coming and they hid under the trees. So we couldn't see it because they've been poached for so long. And for a while there, I saw more dead elephants than I saw live elephants. Because these poachers would go and they would take the tusks, because the Chinese would still pay big bucks for those tusks. So in trade, they'd give them guns and ammo. And when you're living in a place where people don't have guns and ammo, the guy with the bigger stick is king.
Right.
So those guys could do whatever they wanted because nobody could do anything about it. So, but yeah, then ran into some poachers and stuff like that. And I remember the first time, engaging in that and then coming back and was like, hey, are we supposed to fill something out? Because we killed some poachers. No. Animals will take care of it. It was probably like what Afghanistan was when we first showed up to Afghanistan. And then the longer you're there,
the more rules they impose.
Yeah, because the more people screw up, like, oh, well, we can't do that. So now we got to make a rule for this. We got to make a rule for that, till eventually towards the end, you couldn't even really do anything. But yeah, that hippo.
Yeah, tell me that story.
When I was there, the hippos would come up and eat on the grass every night, and right out by our little hooch that we were staying at. And I told my buddy that I was with, I'm like, I want to touch a hippo. I don't know why. I just thought, okay, man, I mean, it's the most dangerous. They kill more humans than any other animal.
Is it by biting them or stomping them?
Biting them. Though they can rip somebody in half with those teeth, and
their mouth is huge too.
Bite force. Have you ever seen them put a watermelon in a hippo's mouth? It's crazy. They put a full watermelon in their mouth, and then they just, doesn't even look like there's effort, and they just smash it and eat it, a whole watermelon. But most of the people that they kill are in the rivers, so they're very territorial. They'll chase boats, they'll tip boats and kill people that are on the boats. I don't know if they attack as much on land, because that's not where they're most comfortable. At least that was my theory. So I thought, maybe I can get.
And this at night?
Maybe I can get away with it. Yeah. During the day, they were always down by the river or in the river. They would just come out at night and eat. So I told my buddy this, and one night he, and I had just taken my Ambien too. So I was a little out of it. And he's like, hey, Nacey. And so I just, I was in my underwear, stood up, put my flip-flops on, and walked out there. And he was shining the flashlight on the hippo to make sure I knew where it was, because I think he was as interested in seeing what would happen as I was. And so I got close to the hippo. I thought I was about 3 feet away, which obviously still really, really close. And that thing turned towards me and grunted and like dropped its head and took a step towards me. So I was like, ooh. So I stopped, and then my buddy's like, Nacey, you better not move. And I'm like, no, duh. Like, I'm not gonna move. And so then I just froze, and the hippo walked away and went back, laid down in bed. And then the next morning, my buddy's like, oh, you were toast. I thought you were going to get munched up by that hippo. And I was like, I was still 3 feet away from it. He's like, no, you practically ran into it.
Did you touch it?
No, I could have.
So close.
I easily could have.
You think it would have reacted if you'd have touched it?
I don't know. I should have smacked it when it, in the butt when it turned around and started walking off, but I didn't want to risk it. One of the guys that was at the African park there, because they had like their own little village, because they had rangers that would go out and protect the elephants.
Right.
Their families lived there in the little village, and they used to have a lot of tourists that came in until Joseph Kony raided that place, killed everybody there, stole the guns, a bunch of guns and whatnot. And since then, they haven't had any tourists. So they've got these little like bungalows. One that we stayed in, it just had, 2 like queen size beds in it and a bathroom. Pretty cool, but nobody ever stayed there because it was too dangerous for tourists to come in. So it was a real unique experience, because not a lot of people
been there,
got to do something.
How'd that whole thing end? You were there 6 months and
yeah. So I mean, we took over for an ODA, and then an ODA took over for us. But I want to say they shut down that mission.
Was it frustrating just so hard to make headway there?
Yeah. There was one time when I was at the African park so one of the elephants they killed had a collar, which would ping every few hours or so. And so they knew where these poachers were, because these poachers thought, oh, this looks valuable. So they cut it off the elephant and they took it with them, not knowing
what it was.
It just looked like they could get some money for it. So every few hours it pinged exactly where these poachers were. So we wrote up a mission like, hey, we want to go poachers. And they thought they denied our request because they said it was too dangerous, which was really frustrating, because we're like, that's the whole purpose why we thought we were here. So the rapport that I was trying to build with the people at the park kind of came into troubled waters, because they're like, well, then what are you even doing here if you can't come out and help us?
Right.
And we're telling them, yeah, we're frustrated. We got to listen to somebody that's in, the team either in Entebbe or AFRICOM, which is in Germany, or where, it's guys that aren't even there are making the call of what we can and can't do. So they get frustrated. So they go out on their own and they get shot up. It killed all the soldiers, but I think one is the only one that made it back. They shot at the helicopter, which, when the pilot landed the helicopter, because it was the African Park's helicopter, when he landed the helicopter, there were bullet holes in there, but in the tail rotor, it went halfway through. And if that thing would have snapped, then the helicopter would have crashed. So he couldn't take off and go recover anybody. So then they asked us if we would help them recover the bodies, and command denied that as well. So they were a little frustrated with us, because they're like, what? I thought this was a two-way street. Like, what are you doing for us. So that was frustrating, but I was there when the UN took their helicopter and recovered the bodies, and then they brought the bodies back to the village, and that was a pretty unique experience too, the way they were mourning and, you know, screaming, crying, carrying these bodies. It was it was interesting. And again, we were all frustrated because we wanted to be there, and if we were there, I assure it would have gone very differently. But turns out this I don't know if he was probably equivalent to like a colonel in our military, was leading these guys, and apparently he had money or stake in the poaching as well. So he was mad that these guys were essentially taking his elephants. So that's why he was so ready to go kill these guys. And he marched in to a camp and had no idea that there was another camp, because again, terrain's very thick, another camp right next to him. So they start advancing and opening fire, and all of a sudden they're getting shot from a place they don't even know where there's people, and he just mowed them all over and wounded the colonel. One guy survived. He got shot, but they ended up recovering him. Jeez. And so I went and interviewed him because command wanted me to find out what happened and, you know, get some intel on it. So I interviewed him, and that's how I knew what was going on. But again, very frustrating, because here we are. Yeah, no, sorry, we want to help, but we can't help. And then, oh, okay, now I want to find out what's going on. It's like he's, you know, I don't know. It was pretty frustrating. So I felt like we had an opportunity to help and do some good things, and somebody told us no. And then you start questioning, well, why are we even here? If we can't do that, which is what I thought we were doing. Now, had we been able to say that was LRA,
no problem,
then it probably would have been a different story. But I don't know. Command did say, oh, that's too dangerous. I'm like, what do you think we're doing? Like, who do you think we are? Like, this is what we signed up. This is what we signed up to do. And now you're telling us it's too dangerous?
Did you get out after the Congo?
Yeah. Shortly. I got out about 8 months. 8 months after that, my contract was up, and again, my wife at the time didn't want me to re-enlist. And
were you sad about that?
Yeah. I was sad. I think it caused some conflict between our marriage, but also transitioning out, I didn't understand. They listed as PTSD, but I don't think now they're starting to kind of call, because they just list anything. Oh, you have mental health issues. If you're a veteran, it's PTSD. But now they're starting to call it operator syndrome, which makes more sense. But regardless, you have this purpose, this meaning, this brotherhood, this mission, all this stuff, and then you transition out of it, and now you're, hey, what's my identity now? You know, and so there's a lot of isolation. And, you know, I remember being home, and because when I would come home, when I was I wouldn't be home for very long. So I didn't want to interrupt the rhythm of the household. I didn't want to start being like, oh no, hey, this is what we're doing, or this is what I just let my wife do what she did, because I knew I was going to be leaving in about 2 or 3 weeks. So I felt that was unfair for me to come in. No, I don't like the way this is. We're doing it this way. Okay. Now that we're doing it this way, see ya. So I just, but kind of a lot of times just felt like a stranger in my own house. And that was a real unique thing too, because when I wasn't deployed and with my team, I was missing my family. When I was with my family and wasn't deployed, I was missing that other family. So there was constantly a pull. It was never satisfied, or you never felt like you were where you needed to be. So then when you transition out, you're missing all that stuff, and you're dealing, at least me, I didn't even know that I qualified for the VA and that I had insurance essentially for a year after I got out. They still cover your health insurance. I didn't know any of that stuff.
So you never took advantage of any of that?
No, I didn't even know it even existed.
Yeah.
And I remember and I don't know if it was anxiety or what it was. Because you would think, right, when you're used to combat, I mean, you're trained for chaos. And that's honestly where I felt most comfortable, was when there was chaos. That's when I felt most calm and most at home. And so then when you get out, there's not that type of
Right.
chaos. So I think guys try to create some of that chaos so they can feel something. And then also guys just end up just going really numb and not feeling anything. So that doesn't bode well in a marriage.
Yeah, right.
Or in a family. Because again, even when I got out of the military, it still felt like I wasn't really home, and that I didn't know where I fit in, because I'd been gone for so long and doing so many other things, and when I was home, I wasn't home for very long, and then I'd leave again. And so I never really knew where my place was, where I fit in, just felt, like just didn't know where I really belonged, which again caused issues and problems. And we ended up getting a divorce, and I get along with my ex-wife great. I mean, but after I started going to therapy and kind of figuring out things, and because she was one of those, and I think a lot of people are like that. They don't really understand mental health, so they think it's kind of a cop out, right? Oh, well, they're just blaming mental health. And in my case, I wasn't even blaming anything on mental health. I didn't even know.
Right. You didn't
mental
know.
health.
I think a lot of times you can't identify it when you're in it.
Wasn't even an issue.
Right.
But she was very much she didn't understand it, because she grew up in a small town in Wyoming. And and I'm certain that there were people that dealt with mental health in her town, but because it was such a small little town, nobody ever really talked about it. So it was very misunderstood. And so I think it was hard for her to grasp that there might be things that I got to work through or whatnot.
How long did it take you to feel like you kind of reached an equilibrium once you got out?
A while, because I didn't even go to therapy for a little while. But kind of where I was going is, I remember eating dinner one time, and at home, we were still married, and my hands was shaking so bad that I couldn't keep the food on my fork, which actually was kind of embarrassing because I'm like, what's going on? So that I basically have to get down closer to the plate and scoop the food in real quick. And my wife noticed that, and she noticed that, there was just wasn't myself, was again kind of detached and not understanding where my place was in the family and all that stuff. So she took me down to some lady there in Rock Springs, helps file VA disability stuff. And so, and again, at that point, I'm like, yeah, no, nothing's wrong. And if there is something wrong, I'm not going to apply for disability because I don't need that money. Give it to somebody who actually needs it, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of how you're conditioned in the military. So, but they convinced me to go to a therapist and talk to a therapist for the rating, the disability rating purposes. And then they were like, yeah, okay, you probably should go see a therapist. And I did for a little while, but I was so afraid of going and seeing a VA therapist because you just hear all these horror stories about the VA. So I'm like, I don't want to go talk to a VA therapist. So I would pay, but that gets expensive. And I needed it more than once a month. Didn't want to pay,
right,
$200 every week to go see a therapist for 45 minutes. And those therapists just didn't really understand either. I mean, I didn't know this at the time, but I'm just like, there just wasn't that connection. And finally I'm like, oh, I need more than what I'm getting. I went to like 3 different therapists and it just wasn't, they couldn't relate. So then I went to a therapist with the Wyoming VA, and they do everything over the computer. So they'll do it in Sheridan, Wyoming, but it's like over.
And was that good?
Yeah, it would probably save my life. It was really good. And I got to go see her every week for an hour, free, charge. So I could see her more if I needed it more. And yeah, and it was great. But the thing that I think helped the most was I heard this from one of my buddies who I got to know going through the Q course, who was living in Vegas, who got out and he was struggling. And there was this nonprofit company that would pay for guys to go get ketamine and some ketamine sessions and what they call SGB, which is the Stella Gangley block or whatever. So you got these nerves in your neck, in the back of your neck, that are in charge of fight or flight. And so is what happens with a lot of these, especially special operations guys, when they get out of the military, is they're still in fight or flight because everything you do, I mean, you're hyper aware of everything because when you're deployed, and you're deployed quite often, and even when you're training as if you were deployed, but everything is a potential threat. So then when you come home, like that's just how your brain works, and you don't really shut that off. So, you're analyzing everything. So you seem distracted, but you're so tuned in. But you're so tuned into everything that's going around you that it's hard to have a normal I mean, I could have a normal conversation with somebody, but they felt like I was distracted because I wasn't looking at them.
Because you're evaluating the situation.
Because that's what you're doing when you're deployed. I mean, you have conversations with your buddy, but you're constantly evaluating what's going on because you're in a combat zone. So everything, you have to evaluate everything because it's everything's a potential threat. So when you do that, in my case, I did it for 6 years. In some of my buddies, they did it for much longer and are still doing it. But when you get out, you don't your brain just doesn't like, oh, okay, nothing's a threat anymore, because that's what you did. And essentially your brain makes new neural pathways because that's now your normal. So then when you come home, your brain still works that way because it had to survive, but you can't just shut it off.
Right.
And so I went and did that, and this doctor in Chicago specializes in it.
So you went to Chicago to do that?
Yeah.
And
so normally the SGB shots that they would give you are normally for people who have God, my brain's shutting off. Migraines. They have migraines. That's supposed to help with migraines. And but they found when they were giving it to veterans who had migraines, that was also helping with PTSD. Because basically what it's doing is it's resetting those nerves that are in charge of fight or flight, who have been in fight or flight for a decade or however long. And so that's just how they work. So it kind of resets it. And I went and did that, and I think that helped more than anything.
How many years ago did you start doing all that stuff?
I did that three years ago, almost 3 years ago. I think in August, it'd be 3 years ago.
And do you feel like you're in a better place now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now it took a while.
Yeah.
To normalize. I remember when I first got it and got home, I had a hard time getting out of bed, had a hard time being motivated to go to the gym or do anything. And I remember the doctor followed up with me 2 weeks later, and it's like, okay, how you feeling? I'm like, I actually feel worse. Like, I don't want to get out of bed. I just, explained to her all that stuff. And she's like, oh, yeah, well, that's normal. I'm like, well, what do you mean it's normal? She's like, to explain it to you, from a 1 to 10, you've been living at a 10. She's like, you could probably drink a Red Bull and it wouldn't even do anything for you. And I'm like, exactly. I always wondered why
it had no effect on you.
Zero effect. She's like, because you're already maxed out. So you're already like keyed on all the time. And she's like, now you're probably at like a 2 or a 3, which is normal for everybody else. But since you haven't lived like that for so long, it was, it was hard to be motivated to do anything because I was keyed up all the time. I'd wake up and I was ready to go. Because again, my brain was constantly in fight or flight. So I'm constantly, okay, let's go. And so it took about a month and a half to kind of adjust to that. But once I adjusted to that, it was way better. I mean, I still have to work on things.
Yeah. You probably always will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, everybody's got
I was going to say everybody's always working on stuff. But then, when I used to go to church, I'd sit in church and I wouldn't even listen to what was going on at church because I was constantly like, I don't know if you call it daydream, whatever you want, but I was going through and had gone through every scenario of somebody, like a potential shooter coming into church and how I would deal with that. Like that's all that would go through my brain was stuff like that. Those scenarios, constantly thinking, okay, if somebody comes and does this, I do this, but what if they have this or that,
For guys struggling, coming back at any stage, you would say don't be afraid to go see the VA.
Yeah. Well, so, and the interesting thing, so I started a nonprofit called the CharlieMike Foundation. And in the military, CharlieMike means continue mission. And I remember when the guys kept saying that over the radio. And mind you, when I got into special operations, I didn't have previous military experience. So I remember thinking, what? Why do you keep saying CharlieMike? Like, what is that? And my buddy was like, it means continue mission. I'm like, why don't you just say continue mission? And this is just how the military works. That, you know, it's always Alpha Bravo, you know. And so, but anyways, I started this nonprofit back in 2019, but hasn't really been able to do much with it. And then recently went to a guide school for fly fishing that a nonprofit paid for me to go, a nonprofit called Operation Pay It Forward, OPIF. Great nonprofit, great organization. But while I was at that school, learning how to be a guide, it was 7-8 days long, something like that. Being on the river 5 of those days and whatnot. Really, man, because fly fishing, especially fly fishing, I'm sure other fishing, because I used to fish a lot before. And then I took up fly fishing because my son asked for a fly rod for Christmas one year. So I'm like, all right, yeah, that's cool. So I got him a fly rod and a reel and got him all set up. Then, of course, he wanted to go out fly fishing. So we went down to the lower Green, below the dam, which is some of the best fly fishing in the country. So I'd take him down there and I'd have my little spin caster. So I'd toss out a lure while he was fly fishing. I would always catch more fish because the fish weren't used to the lures, but they were used to the flies. But I'd watch him. I'm like, man, that looks fun and more challenging. It's not just throwing something in there, right? You
got to be present.
Yeah.
Right.
You're present. You have to read the water, the changing of the water, the bugs, so you can get the right fly and make sure that drift is perfect. Cause if it's off, then it doesn't look natural. And so the fish aren't going to eat the fly because they know it's not natural, especially in those areas where people fly fish all the time. They're like, yeah, you're not going to fool me. So the presentation has to be perfect. The condition, so you have to know the conditions and everything. I started watching my son do this, my oldest son, and I'm like, I don't want to start doing it. So I went and got a fly rod and everything. So I would fly fish instead of just fishing normal. I would fly fish with him. And, it was harder at first because I didn't know anything about fly fishing. So, but we tried, but we wouldn't go as much because for me, it was kind of frustrating because I didn't know, to be honest with you, I didn't know you had to understand the currents and the bugs
right.
and the stuff. Cause I'd open up my little fly box and I'd be overwhelmed because I'm like, what do I even choose? When I went to this guide school and started learning all that stuff, I started kind of figuring out that there's a lot of similarities between, what I did. Now, one, in the military, I was trained to deal with chaos. In fly fishing, you have to train yourself to deal with the silence and the stillness, but they're still the same discipline. You have to be disciplined. You have to read terrain. It's like in the military. You have to, so there's a lot of similarities. But I think the biggest thing was what you mentioned. You have to be present, and being present is a really healthy, healing thing, and, but this, there's a term in fly fishing that you have to mend your line, and mending is making a little adjustment because the current is different on the surface of the water. So it'll take your line faster than it takes, say, the fly. So then it's dragging the fly. So there's tension. so it doesn't look natural. So you mend it, which is you flick your wrist and you put your line upstream so that your fly flies or drifts naturally. So I started a new project called Mend the Drift to help special operations guys transition out of the military. And the significance of that, right, is mending is, again, not changing who you are, not changing what you're doing, just adjusting, just making little adjustments, because the river is always different, right? And when we were in the military, that was fast moving river. And then you get out of the military and you're still dealing with the river the same way, you know, if you want to use that analogy, as you were in the military, but it's much slower. It's a much slower pace, and so adjusting and mending, you know, is
beautiful analogy, man.
Helps guys,
adjust,
get the tension off.
So that's what you're focused on now.
Yeah. So I went and did that and loved it. Actually took some vets out this last weekend for another nonprofit, that Operation Pay It Forward. I did that with them, but now I want to start taking, but I want to focus on special operations.
Yeah.
Because the suicide rate for conventional veterans who served conventional is 22.3% of the veterans commit suicide when they transition out of the military, or at some point, veterans. In special operations, that's 39.3%. So 30% higher than conventional forces are. And the attempt versus suicide rate for conventional forces is 14. I think it's 14 or 15 attempts to every suicide. With special operations guys, we call it SOF, Special Operation Forces. With SOF veterans, it's 2 to 1. So 2 attempts to every suicide. So when they do it, they do it. And they're less likely to ask for help. They're less likely to, and more likely when they get that in their mind to actually do it and succeed. So my nonprofit is specifically for soft veterans, because that's what I understand.
Yeah.
And then me being able to take these guys down the river, it'll just be me and them and somebody that has been in their shoes, floating down the river, having conversations. And then is what I'd like to eventually do is a podcast with them, so that we could talk about their service, talk about their transition, and then talk about
healing up,
converting
back
to
normal life.
And I want to call that the drift debrief. So
it's beautiful.
But then that way other guys can hear what some of these other veterans are going through, and maybe be more likely to be like, oh, okay, well, that's normal. So, and there's help. There's things that I can do about it. So we'll see. I mean, I've been digging into it, and I thought it was kind of crazy timing too, that Jason connected us, and because, you know, there'll probably be a lot of things I'm picking your brain on, so that I can try to
you bet,
try to make that happen again, so that documenting their stories, but also there's a different kind of healing and opening up to somebody who has been there and done that and walked in those shoes.
If I was going to give you any advice, it was what you were talking about with the You can't bite the whole thing off at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just do one.
Yep.
Just live to lunch. Live to the next thing.
Yep.
Don't bite off too much at the beginning, because then it just swallows you up, you know?
See, and that's hard for guys like me, because you're like, okay, now this is what I want to do. You focus on that direction and you just go 100%. So
there's a cost to people getting ready for war and enlisting. No matter, even if you do something small in the military, you know, a lot of guys are like, oh, I never really did anything. And it's like, the training, everything that goes into it, there's a heavy burden.
I have a an ex-brother-in-law, and I'll always still consider him a brother-in-law, but it's my ex-wife's sister's husband. But he served in the military, and he went to Kuwait, and but he was in intelligence and didn't really leave the wire. And so same thing. He's like, well, I don't think, but I know that, you know, yeah, maybe you didn't shoot anybody, but regardless, if you're in the military, you train with a weapon, and you train with a weapon because you train to take life if needed. Now, your job might not require that. Like, his job didn't require that, but he still had to train for that. And when you train for that, it still does something to that, to your brain. There's still a cost. Even though you don't physically do it, you still have to prepare to do it, and you're still trained to do it. And people don't realize that there's a cost at that. So he won't even go to the VA because he doesn't think he deserves it.
Yeah, that's a shame.
And there's a lot of guys that are like that, because they're like, oh, I mean, again, I was even like that. But one interesting thing is the DOD, every single soldier that enlists in the military, they budget for 100% disability. So that's in the budget. So you're not taking it away from anybody. You're not, oh, well, if I get it, then that means maybe somebody who needs it worse. Because that's what I thought. I thought, well, if I claim some disability, then somebody who maybe really needs it, or I think really needs it, I really did, but I didn't think that, then I'm taking away from somebody else. And that's not the case. Every single soldier could get 100% service-connected disability and paid for that, and it's budgeted. And that's one of the only things in the government that is under surplus. It's there and not used.
Yeah.
Because soldiers are trained to be tough and think that they do it and make it through. And so they don't take advantage of those opportunities, which they should.
Well, dude, I think your pursuits, it's great. That's very, it's a good vibe, good thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the selfish thing is, I think it helps me more than it helps them. So
I've interviewed lots of vets, and the ones that really seem to be doing better are ones who reached out for other people.
This Operation Pay It Forward, there's some people involved that didn't serve, but make good money, and they donate not just money, but time, and they help, and they get more out of it than the vets.
Funny, I've never heard of it until the other day, and my buddy who's an ex-cop who was in San Jose forever, and he told me that's the one thing he donates to, and he was telling me about it, which is so weird that you're bringing this up, because I just heard about it 3 days ago.
Yeah, so, they're the ones that paid for me to go to that guide.
Yeah,
and that guide school was awesome. Like, I really felt, I don't know, just being out in nature. And again, back to what you said, you have to be in the moment. And it's hard, I think, for veterans to really be in the moment, because they don't know where they fit in. And so it was good. So I was like, man, I want to do this. I want to take other vets out. But again, special operations guys, just because, one, I'm involved with OPIF and they do all veterans. And there's a lot of people that focus
on veterans
just as a whole, which is great. But since I know special operations, and since that's where I was at, those are the guys that I think I can really connect with. So with Man the Drift, I'll focus on special operations guys. And then OPIF, I done any vet.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
But yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Thanks for coming up today and sharing all that.
I appreciate it. We've been chatting for a while.
It's gone by pretty fast.
You're probably like,
thanks for sharing your stories, man.
Go.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a real honor.
I'm glad that Jason mentioned that and made the introduction.
Yeah, me too.
And we're able to come out here. And there's, I know plenty of vets that I could probably connect you with.
Oh, that would be great, man. I love it.
They can share their story. I think sharing too is part of the healing.
For sure.
Part of the healing process. And every vet, like you mentioned, every vet needs healing. Because every vet made that sacrifice.
Yeah.
And there's a cost. There's a cost to serving. And the normal population, I don't think understands that.
I guess that's the value I see in these stories, is that if somebody wants to, they can hear. And it's not all a pity party, but there's just a cost associated with it. It's just it's just what it is. It's not good or bad. It's just what it is, you know?
And I think that's what interests people is I think people do want to know. They just
don't. You know, and a lot of guys don't share. You know, those old guys, especially, they didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And just keeping it cooped up inside isn't great either. So
no, it's not good at all. But again, they have a hard time sharing because they don't think people relate.
Yeah.
And a lot of those older guys were in a generation that, like my uncle was drafted to Vietnam and he saw some pretty bad things. And he came home and was called all sorts of, baby killer, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they were not welcomed home. And because of that, a lot of them don't share their stories because they were criticized and ridiculed.
Cool thing is now, though, that they're looked at, in my opinion, the same way people looked at World War II guys. They look at them now and go, you know what? Yeah, was that war great? No. Did those guys go do what they were asked? Yeah. And that's the big deal,
And that's like my uncle. My uncle's like, I got drafted.
Yeah. I didn't ask to go over
I
there.
didn't ask. Yeah. I didn't ask. I went because I'm an American, and I was drafted to go. And so I went for my country. I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And then he comes home and, so yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
You bet.